All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian. I've got a lot of energy. We got stories for you guys. As always, Michigan shooter, a number of stories that come out of that. And then the usual set of madness that exists in the world. But don't worry, we'll walk you through it. We'll give you the actual facts, including some facts that you might find shocking today.
This is CNN breaking news, even though it's not. I'm just kidding.
That's it. We should do our version of that. This is TYT breaking news.
Shocking.
Shocking news. Okay.
All right. Well, we do have some good news. Not good news, but we have good takes on bad news. So why don't we get started?
That's not a bad subtitle. Young Turks. Good takes on bad news.
Actually, I think that's a winner.
That is kind of what we do. Anyway, all right, let's do it.
Parents of the Michigan high school shooting suspect are in police custody right now. This was after the pair evaded authorities for hours after they were charged with involuntary manslaughter.
That's right. The parents of Oxford High School shooter Ethan Crumbley were finally captured over the weekend after they attempted to flee prosecution for their part in the tragedy. Now, the man who law enforcement claimed helped the parents hide has also identified himself. So police launched a manhunt after the parents failed to appear at their arraignment hearing on Friday, later arresting them at a Detroit building after a sighting by a member of the public. Early Saturday, police said authorities found the couple on the first floor of an industrial or commercial building in Detroit, some 40 miles south of Oxford, where they live, after someone tipped police Friday night that their vehicle was nearby. Now, the Crumbleys claim that, they're good people. They weren't trying to flee. It's just they wanted a safe space to stay in as they were receiving all sorts of death threats. But the fact of the matter is they didn't appear at their scheduled arraignment. There were also other elements that are worth mentioning, including the fact that they decided to withdraw $4,000 from their ATM or from their bank account as they were fleeing, trying to evade the authorities. But we've got more details on this. Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, no, this is actually my favorite part of the story. Disaster story, but this part is a little amusing. They're like, no, we weren't fleeing. We just ran from the house, grabbed all the cash we could, and then hid in a warehouse, instead of being in court where we were supposed to show up for our arraignment. And their lawyer explains that they had, quote, fully intended to turn themselves in before authorities arrested them Saturday morning.
Right.
Well, when the authorities come to arrest you and you go, you're never gonna believe this, but while I was hiding in the warehouse, had made the decision that I was about to turn myself in when you guys broke the door down. What an amazing coincidence. By the way, same exact thing Osama bin Laden said. Oh, SEAL Team 6 is here. You'll never believe this, guys. I was about to turn myself in. Okay, not really how it works. It takes some degree of temerity to make that claim. Also, by the way, I don't know why they got bail. I can't imagine a bigger flight risk.
Exactly.
They already ran,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine a more important case. It was 4 kids murdered and 7 wounded. So what does it take not to get bail? Do you have to be black or brown to not get bail? But they have a bail option. I don't know if the right wing has started raising funds for them yet, but wait for it.
Here's some other information that's relevant. So as I had mentioned, the parents also withdrew $4,000 on Friday from an ATM in Rochester Hills, about 10 to 15 miles from Oxford. And that's according to what a law enforcement official told CNN. Law enforcement were tracking the couple's whereabouts by cell phone pings, but the signal had dropped because the couple's cell phones were mysteriously turned off.
They were about to turn them back on, Anna, and turn themselves in and leave the warehouse where they were in hiding like 3 seconds before the cops caught them. And it's just an unlucky break that they caught there.
Now, their defense attorney is doing what defense attorneys are supposed to do. She's attempting to defend their bad behavior, but get a load of the laughable argument the defense attorney made in this video. Let's watch.
Last night and throughout the day, we were in contact with our clients. They were scared, they were terrified, they were not at home, they were figuring out what to do, getting finances in order, and we had plans to meet them at 7:30 to text the fugitive apprehension team to get to the court by 8:30 so they could be arraigned first thing. Those were plans we made and solidified, and we did not announce it because unlike the prosecution, we weren't attempting to make this a media spectacle.
Right, so it's the prosecution's fault for making these two suspects flee police, and then that led to a manhunt, which of course is gonna be publicized because they're on the run as they're facing involuntary manslaughter charges, but it's the prosecution's fault.
Yeah, the reason they were caught is because they publicized their car and their license plate, and a Good Samaritan saw it and then saw, I believe, the mom by the car and then called 911, and they were caught that way. And it was just minutes before they were about to turn themselves in that they were caught, of course. And otherwise, they're such upstanding citizens. That's what they usually do. Anyways, look, guys, one more thing about that. They said they were so deathly afraid. Of what exactly? Are they saying the cops, they were afraid of the cops? I mean, who else was gonna come to get them? Are they saying that there's something wrong with the cops, that they would have just shot them? By the way, the cops did go into a situation where these guys were running from the law and they were, considered very dangerous and perhaps armed. And they didn't do anything to them. They just arrested them, perfectly calmly. So I think it's a really good question to ask them. What were you afraid of?
Now, both of them are being held in the same county prison as their son, but all three of them, of course, are separated. The parents are in isolation, and they are on suicide watch as well. In regard to their charges, James and Jennifer Crumbley are each charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the alleged actions of their 15-year-old son, Ethan Crumbley, who is accused of killing 4 classmates during Tuesday's shooting at Oxford High School in suburban Detroit. Now, in regard to the individual who helped the parents hide out in a warehouse, he claims that he had no idea that the parents had an active warrant, and really that is the big question that needs to be answered as to whether or not he gets prosecuted for helping them out. So he could be charged with harboring criminals or harboring suspects. However, if there's any indication that he was really ignorant of the fact that they had active warrants against him or against them, then he could avoid being prosecuted. So his name is Andre Sikora. On Sunday, identified himself through his attorney as the individual law enforcement says helped the Crumbleys. Now,
I'm just gonna make a quick note on him. He actually did turn himself in,
right?
And we don't know his circumstances, so I reserve all judgment on him completely. He might not have known. We don't know any of that, right? The parents clearly knew that Ethan Crumbley had a weapon that they had given to him as a present. They clearly knew he had written things that were very disturbing, like "the thoughts won't stop, help me." And after knowing that, they did not withdraw him from school, and they did not tell the school that he potentially had a gun on him. Instead, they just walked away. So, before we get to the trial, obviously they'll adjudicate it in the trial, but they appear to be massively guilty. I just want to make a distinction between them and the other guy who might or might not have helped them to hide.
Exactly, and I also want to talk a little bit about the charges that the parents are facing, why they're facing involuntary manslaughter charges. And I think they should face involuntary manslaughter charges. For instance, prosecutors allege that they allowed their son free access to the gun used in the shooting, which they say James Crumbley bought 4 days prior on Black Friday. But one of their attorneys, Shannon Smith, said the gun was locked. So that's something that needs to be proven or adjudicated. But whether the gun was locked or not, it's abundantly clear that their son, Ethan, not only had access to the gun, but he was posting photos of the gun on social media. He was also engaging in some behavior in the classroom that drew some attention from educators, from teachers, and they reported him to counselors. And it seems as though the parents were aware of that and basically let him know, we're not mad at you, just be a little more careful next time, don't get caught. Let me give you the details on that. So Jennifer Crumbley also posted about the gun on social media, calling it his new Christmas present McDonald continued. McDonald is the prosecutor in this case. And his mother also took him to a shooting range the weekend before the shooting at the school, according to law enforcement. We also have some more details about those warning signs that the educators had noticed. For instance, the day before the shooting, a teacher saw Ethan Crumbley searching for ammunition on his phone and reported it to school officials. Jennifer Crumbley, the mother, did not respond to school officials when they called her about the conduct, but later that day, sent a text message to her son saying, quote, "LOL, I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught," end quote.
I don't know if she wrote that message or thought the same thing right after he murdered 4 kids and wounded 7. LOL, oh, I mean, no, you know what? We do know actually, because she probably said it to her and herself and to her husband. LOL, our son murdered 4 people with a gun we bought him as a Christmas present when we knew he clearly had mental health issues and was 15 years old. Let's try not to get caught. Let's go hiding in a warehouse somewhere, okay?
Yeah.
So the degree to which I have no sympathy for these parents is immeasurable. The degree to which I have enormous sympathy for the parents of the victims is also immeasurable. I think these people should spend, look, you could say it's harsh. I think they should spend the rest of their lives in prison. Those kids aren't coming back. If I was the family of the kids who got killed, when do my kids come back? Well, their whole life is taken. Their whole life is taken. And by the way, I'll make note here as a progressive, I'm not sure that Ethan Crumbley should be charged as an adult. He's 15 years old. He wrote things like, "My life is useless, the world is dead, the thoughts won't stop, help me." That's a cry for help from this to whoever would listen, the school, his parents, etc. And so he's got issues, and that is an interesting case as to whether he should be tried as an adult or not. The lunatic parents who gave that 15-year-old a gun
and then tried to flee the authorities.
Yes, that is not unclear. That is very, very clear. They're definitely, again, it gets adjudicated in court, but from the evidence we can see, they appear to be enormously guilty.
And just a few more facts to the story, what we're learning as it develops. So the day of the shooting, this is chilling. A different teacher became alarmed after the alleged shooter had a drawing that showed a semi-automatic handgun pointing at the words, "The thoughts won't stop, help me," to Cenk's point. Another section displayed a drawing of a bullet with the words "blood everywhere" written above it. Between the drawing of the gun and the bullet is one of a person who seems to have been shot twice and is bleeding. So when the teacher saw that, of course, she reports it to school officials, but what's incredible is while it seems as though the educators wanted him to leave school that day, this is the day of the shooting, the parents were relentless in demanding that he go back to class. And they listened to the parents, and unfortunately he was allowed back in class. They did not search his backpack, which is something that the school officials have the right to do. Also, below that figure, in regard to that drawing that he had, below that figure is a drawing of a laughing emoji, prosecutor Karen McDonald said. Also found on the note, according to McDonald, again, McDonald is the prosecutor, "My life is useless and the world is dead."
Yeah, a couple more points here. Look, I wouldn't give a 15-year-old a gun under any circumstances. I don't know, man. I'm sure that there are some mature 15-year-olds, but in my experience, the overwhelming majority of 19-year-olds are
15-year-olds?
15-year-olds are nowhere near mature enough to handle any weapon, let alone a gun. And then you see those notes. And I certainly would, no matter what anybody's age was, I would never give someone a gun that said the world is dead and I have blood everywhere and it make the thoughts stop. Come on. And then it's a 15-year-old that has those thoughts, and the parents know he has the gun,
right?
And they let him go back into the school. And by the way, he then started shooting people immediately as soon as he was allowed back into the school. The parents are absolute monsters. And then look, and every excuse of theirs is total weak sauce nonsense. I mean, it was locked, really? Well, as Anna pointed out, there it is in the picture. He's holding it in the picture. Boy, that seems really locked, right? And then second of all, you know how we know it's not locked? Because he had it and he used it as the murder weapon. That's how we know it wasn't locked. Or maybe it was locked and you gave him the code. It doesn't matter, either way, you're enormously negligent and totally guilty of this crime, at least. I mean, there's such monsters. There's no end to it. Look, it's kind of a weird story because it's so serious, but their excuses are so lame. It's hard not to make fun of. Dragon with the Girl tattoo wrote in, they're a member here. When caught red-handed, I wasn't stealing a cookie. I was putting it back. Right? No, amazing. No one believes you, and guys, the most important part of this is that it's not a rando case. Okay, this is gun culture in America. There are there are millions of Americans who think, oh yeah, if you're 15-year-olds, of course you give them weapons, for hunting and for government tyranny and to protect themselves. And then, if they see anything fishy, they're 15, they're 12, they're 13, just kill people. Here's a weapon of murder. Just go do it. Who cares? You're mature, you're not mature. Guns are awesome. Guns are the best. If you think I'm exaggerating, you don't live in America. Everyone who lives in America knows that's absolutely true, that people definitely believe that. And so that's why America is an incredibly dangerous place. You should honestly be, if you're thinking of visiting here, you should think twice. This is a deeply, deeply violent country that celebrates this kind of gun culture.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including a Republican representative putting out a pro-gun photo just after the mass shooting happened at Oxford High School. We've got that story and more when we return.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Republican Representative Thomas Massie decided to post a photo, a nice little holiday photo over the weekend, and the timing couldn't be worse, especially considering the fact that there was just a school shooting that led to 4 kids dying as a result of one of their classmates opening fire. So here's what the photo looks like. Thomas Massie tweets, "Merry Christmas, P.S. Santa, please bring ammo." Every member of his family has a weapon on them, and they all have big, bright smiles. What a great, lovely photo. Now, of course, there was a lot of backlash to that image, especially from individuals who have actually lost family members as a result of America's lax gun culture. Fred Gutenberg, whose 14-year-old daughter, Jamie, was one of the 17 people gunned down in Parkland, Florida, responded to Massie's tweet, writing this: "Since we're sharing family photos, here are mine. One is the last photo that I ever took of Jamie. The other is where she is buried because of the Parkland school shooting. The Michigan school shooter and his family used to take photos like yours as well." And there was some backlash from other lawmakers as well, including Congressman John Yarmuth, who tweeted this: "I promise not everyone in Kentucky is an insensitive a-hole."
Yeah, Yarmuth is a retiring Democrat from Kentucky and actually one of the better congresspeople in the country and has been for a couple of decades. Massie is a lunatic right-winger from Kentucky. That's the difference. So put the picture back up because, yeah, people are making great points, serious points. Gutenberg's point is the most salient, of course, and very touching. I'm just gonna tell you what I honestly think. I think they look like a family of lunatics out of a horror movie. I'm being completely serious. That looks like what you would run into in a horror movie, like, oh, hey, am I safe? And you're running from the monster or whatever and the killer, and then you knock on the door, and then this is what you see, and then you scream even louder because it's not just one person with a weapon that's scary. It's the whole family who, I don't know, and they have these deranged smiles on their face, like, hey, murder's about to happen any second now. We have enough bullets here to kill a whole village, okay? You've come to the wrong house on Christmas. I mean, yeah. but honestly, this is what's wrong with America. We are so split that a lot of people look at that picture, millions of people in America look at that picture and go, attaboy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. You don't find that photo appealing in any way because you're not the demographic that's being targeted by that image, right? The people that would find that appealing are the very individuals who support Representative Massie anyway, right? And they don't necessarily support Massie based on what he stands for policy-wise. This is just more of the, honestly, easy pandering to cultural issues. And in this case, it's the gun culture.
Yeah, And look, what's next? In the next Christmas photo album of the Massies, they're gonna have like RPGs, the fire-shouldered rockets. They're gonna have hand grenades. Oh, we pulled it. After the picture, we're throwing it out the window, or maybe we're not. I don't know. Weapons are awesome. Oh, one of us has a finger on the nuke. We're thinking of nuking the whole town. Yay, violence, murder and violence, yay. And so we live with these folks. We live with millions and millions of these folks. Look, are there guns in other countries? Well, the answer is, for most countries, barely, right? But they exist in other countries. But is there a culture in other countries where they celebrate death, violence, guns, homicides, etc.? Yeah, but only a couple. Like Afghanistan, the Taliban loved the weapons. They would have a picture almost exactly like that, right? Except they wouldn't give it to the women. So, to be fair, right? In this case, the women have murderous weapons too. Who do we murder? Yeah, right? You might find a couple like that in other war-torn countries and other fundamentalist countries, but there is no answer to this. There is some massive percentage of our country that thinks weapons that are designed to kill people is like the greatest thing in the world, and it's a substitute for their penis, and it's a substitute for feeling safe and secure. In reality, of course, the more if you have a weapon in your house, your chance of dying goes skyrocketing. Those are a matter of statistics and facts, but they don't care about facts. They have that many weapons in the house, including some that look like they're out of some ridiculous Rambo movie.
Yeah.
The chance of one of them dying is much, much, much higher than if they had no weapons in the house.
So over the weekend, I interviewed an associate professor over at Harvard for Jacobin, and he's done a lot of extensive research on the incarceration rate in the United States, and how we incarcerate more people than any other developed country. And I promise this all connects. So the United States, compared to other developed countries, stands out in terms of its violence, in terms of violent crime. And part of the reason why is because the United States does not have a robust welfare state, right? And so that leads to people feeling this sense of insecurity, this lack of safety. They think they need the guns to protect themselves, which I get, like that's a rational thought. And so people start arming themselves, thinking that they are Rambo, thinking that they can protect themselves in any and all situations where someone poses a threat. But that gun culture has just kind of snowballed into what we see in that image, right? Part of it is political and cultural pandering, but part of it is also just this thought that guns are fun toys, when in reality, like if the right wing believes in the right to bear arms, they should take it seriously. They should treat it as a weapon that could do mass harm to people around them. And they should be preaching responsibility with guns. But they don't do that. They treat it as a toy. They treat it as if it's not a big deal at all. And we just see more and more death and destruction as a result of that. I mean, we've had 32 school shootings in this country since August of this year. 32.
In 3 months.
It's crazy.
Not mass shootings, school shootings. Mass shootings are a much larger number because there's nonstop massacres in America. We call them mass shootings. There's a different word for it. It is very literal. It's massacre. We average 1 massacre a day in America, and it's because the right wing thinks it's awesome and really cool. We have come to accept it in America. We're like, oh, at any moment, any of us can get massacred by the right wing lunatics who walk around us and that have weapons all over them. And the minute any of them gets a little agitated, they're like, government tyranny, murder everyone, okay? Or whatever. I got thoughts running in my head, or I don't like you, or you're Antifa, or you threw a plastic bag at me, or you had Skittles in your pocket, whatever, murder, 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 murder. And they celebrated. John Bocino asked a good question. It was the same one I had to look at this picture a couple of times. He's one of our members, tyt.com/join, to become a member and be part of the show. He said, is that a little girl pointing her gun at her mom's head? And I look carefully, it appears she's not pointing it at the mom's head, but it's close. And obviously those weapons shouldn't be loaded, but are you sure they're not loaded? Look at the lunatic parents in the pictures smiling broadly as they have these gigantic guns. And I guess the dad has the shortest penis because he has to overcome. So, oh, look at this guy. I could murder dozens, maybe hundreds of people with this thing. Oh, I would be such a good murderer. Okay, right wing, enjoy. But it's super scary. We live in a crazy country.
And remember, the parents of the Oxford High School shooter are now facing involuntary manslaughter charges for making the gun so accessible to their 15-year-old son. And just after that, Massie thought it was a great idea to post that photo.
He's a United States congressman.
And he's not the first one who's done this. They do this all the time. This is a common occurrence in Republican politics.
And again, one last point. If you live in Japan or England or any other civilized country, you think, yeah, I know he's a congressman for now, but obviously he's not going to get elected again after having a little kid in the picture with a high-powered weapon, he looking like a lunatic, having his whole family look like a bunch of murderers ready to shoot themselves, each other, people that come in, innocent people. Obviously not going to get elected again. Oh no, he'll win easily. People look in his district, look at that and go, and that's what's really scary. They look at that and they go, oh yeah, man. They are ready for murder. I like these guys.
All right, well, we have another gun-related story, Joy. Let's talk about that. So, Jake Tapper recently had an interview with Democratic Senator Chris Murphy about gun control legislation, which has gone nowhere in Congress. And I thought the framing of Tapper's question was fascinating here. Let's take a look at that and how Senator Murphy responded.
Senator Murphy says he will consider his time in public service, quote, a failure if he is not able to pass a significant federal firearms reform bill. Senator Murphy of Connecticut joins us right now. So Senator, this horrific violence at Oxford High School in Michigan, it was the deadliest school shooting in more than 3 years. The 9th anniversary of Sandy Hook is just over a week away. You obviously represent Sandy Hook in the Senate. We have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, a pro-gun control president, Democrat. No new gun regulations have passed. Why not?
Well, listen, I think it's first important to remember that while the nation pays attention to the epidemic of shooting in this country on days in which there is a mass shooting, 100 people every day are dying from gunshot wounds, and we've seen a dramatic uptick in violence since the beginning of the pandemic. The fact of the matter is we have the votes in the House and the Senate for universal background checks bill. We have a president who will sign it. It's the rules of the Senate that prevent us from passing it. We probably have 52, 53, 54 votes in the Senate for this. So the rules right now are what prevent us from being able to enact the will of the public.
So in other words, we have the votes. We have majority of senators who want to pass gun control regulation. We know that public opinion is on our side, but what are we going to do? We still have that legislative filibuster in the Senate, which requires 60 votes to pass anything, and so that's standing in our way.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So in this first clip, Jake Tapper's done nothing wrong at all. That's going to change in the second clip. That was a perfectly good question, and the same question I'd ask. Well, you guys control everything. Well, why haven't you passed it if you say it's such a top priority for you, right? In this case, Chris Murphy, who on this issue is generally pretty great, right? To be fair and give you the full context, has a terrible answer because there are no good answers. Oh, because of a rule in the Senate, we cannot pass what a majority want in the Senate and the House. And the president also wants it. We cannot have what the majority want in a democracy because of the rules of the Senate. The correct follow-up question should have been, so then, Senator, you're saying the rules of the Senate are more important than the lives of the kids that were murdered at Sandy Hook. Because you say you need this gun regulation to prevent more massacres and more massacres at schools like the one that you're concerned about. But your party, this is a stone cold fact, is saying that the filibuster and protecting it is more important than all of those lives.
Yeah, and to be sure, Senator Murphy did not advocate for doing away with the legislative filibuster. He just cited the legislative filibuster as the reason for the Senate's inability to pass gun control legislation. And this is why I'm honestly at this point, whether we're talking about Democrats or Republicans, I don't even care about the political affiliation. I'm sick of Congress, I'm sick of the Senate, and I'm not interested in their excuses. their excuse is honestly incredibly fake and phony because they know that Chuck Schumer, with the blessing from the Biden administration, could do away with the legislative filibuster. And could do away with the Senate parliamentarian who is an unelected official who apparently has more say in our future than the president of the United States does, than our elected lawmakers do. So I'm not interested in their excuses. If they wanted to do something about the filibuster, they could do something about the filibuster. Jake Tapper should have asked a follow-up question about that. He didn't, of course.
Okay, now if Murphy's right, let's also note that at least 90% of Republicans are opposed to doing anything at all. They're like, oh, massacres in the schools, we think the correct action is nothing at all. Who cares? It's your kids that got massacred, not mine. My legislative proposal is nothing at all. And you have a proposal? It's just the simplest thing in the world, federal background checks. 97% of Americans agree to it, including the overwhelming majority of Republican voters. I don't care, I don't want to do anything. So if Chris Murphy actually wanted to fight, he would say the Republican Party is pro-massacre. Until they pass federal background checks that their own voters want, they are pro-massacre. But oh, God forbid he should hurt the feelings of his goddamn colleagues. And every time we mention the filibuster, it should be noted that it is an arbitrary rule that was mainly done to fight against civil rights and can be done away with tomorrow by the Democrats. But they say, no, we love that tradition. BS, it's a lie. The filibuster is meant to protect the Democratic Party donors who do not want them to pass economic measures that would help the American people. And if they don't have the filibuster, they'll have no excuse.
Right.
And so the filibuster is the Democratic Party's excuse for inaction to actually serve their donors. Because the Democratic Party says the right things, but they are just as corrupt as the Republican Party. So you are seeing an incredibly corrupt senator there protect his party and his incredibly corrupt colleagues. Oh, well, I could save the massacres of the kids. On the other hand, my donors paid me a lot of money so that we don't have higher wages, so you don't have health care, okay? So Jake, the money to us is more important than the kids. Why don't you just be honest about it? But if you think that's bad, wait till you get a load of the second clip.
All right, let's watch.
Republican Senator Pat Toomey from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you've worked with him on this issue. He told me a few months ago, you'll remember, of course, when he and Manchin, both NRA guys, put together a bill to close the so-called gun show loophole. He said that he thinks that that could potentially get 60 votes in the Senate, but there's been no progress on it because people who want gun reform in the Senate want big sweeping gun reform and won't be happy with even just an incremental step like closing the gun show loophole. Wouldn't that, I mean, isn't something better than nothing?
Listen, I won't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? I want universal background checks. I want a ban on assault weapons, but I will settle for something much less because that will save lives. So I've been in negotiations all year with Senator Toomey, with Senator Cornyn, with Lindsey Graham, trying to find a compromise that can get 60 votes in the Senate. Maybe this shooting will bring people back to the table, but we haven't taken a vote this year, in part because I've asked Senator Schumer for the room to try to negotiate that compromise that you're talking about.
Okay, God, cable news is just toxic. So look at that framing by Jake Tapper. The Republicans say they want to take action on this, but it looks like it's the Democrats' fault for trying to ask for too much. Democrats, aren't you trying to stop too many massacres? Oh, come on, it's the Democrats' fault. The poor Republicans are offering to compromise. No, they're not. Okay, first of all, every one of those provisions that the Democrats pretend to want is incredibly popular. The Republicans say, yes, I know, but my donors don't want it. The NRA pays me, bribes me to not want it. But I would theoretically do only one of those, the mildest one. But that's not even true. Because Murphy says, I talk to Toomey all the time, the beloved senator that you were just kissing the ass of, Jake Tapper, okay? And he can't get 10 votes on anything. He can't get 10 Republican votes on anything. But if you don't know all that background and you just turn on cable news that day and you watch that, you would think, well, I guess the Republicans are trying to solve it, but the Democrats won't work with them. I mean, that's a politician. I don't know if I trust the politician, but that news anchor, okay, says that it's the Republicans who are trying to help and the Democrats are blocking it. Why won't they just take it? And then Murphy, of course, because he's a weakling and a classic corporate Democrat, is like, oh yeah, I'm working with the Republicans, I'm begging them. Cenk, you don't understand how much I'm begging the Republicans to do something. Shut up and man up, man. Are you gonna do something or nothing? Why don't you say, you're on national television. Why don't you say the Republicans think we should do no gun control, and that is a fact. They cannot get 10 votes on anything. Forget the 48 Republican senators. I can't get 10 out of the 48 to do the mildest version. Hence, the Republicans are pro-massacre. They're getting our kids murdered, and that is true. But he cares more about his Republican friends and his corporate donors than he cares about you or your kids. So what you see on cable news is nothing but theater. They get together, they do their powder, they get, how do we look? We're at the Capitol, we look so good, we're all gonna get rich and we're all powerful and famous, and your kids are gonna get murdered. Let's put on a show about how we care, how we're doing something. Here's another excuse why we can't do something. And then Jake Tapper will come out and credit the Republicans for being the brave people trying to fix this thing. They're not news anchors, they're news actors. They don't know anything about the news. And the people at the Capitol don't care about your lives at all. I guess they think they have good security at their private schools that their kids go to, because they're not at all concerned about your kids. Not 1%. They'll never be honest with you about what's actually happening in this country.
When we come back from the break, probably the craziest take on the Oxford High School shooting that you've ever heard. Strong words, not hyperbole. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys.
All right, so as we shared with you earlier, some in the press decided to use images of the Oxford High School shooter, Ethan Crumbley, a photo from when he was literally 10 years old and he looked like he was praying, which is a strange image to use for someone who opened fire on his campus, killing 4 schoolmates. Now, Kim Iversen, who is one of the co-hosts on Rising for the Hill, had her own take on the use of an innocent-looking Ethan Crumbley photo. Let's hear what she has to say and make sure you listen till the end.
Look at the photos of Ethan Crumbley people on social media and some media outlets are using. He's now 15, and yet they chose this angelic-looking photo from about when he was 10. What is the purpose of this when there are several other photos like his mugshot that could have been shown instead? This same sort of tactic is used in reverse against Black perpetrators and even victims. Rather than use their school photo of them smiling and looking like good kids, they use the meanest looking, most aggressive photo they can find on social media to portray them as villains. They attempt to portray them as people who either obviously would commit the heinous crime they did or victims who deserved it. They do this to placate a certain bias and mindset that the audience already holds, and the same looks to be happening in this case. Showing Crumbley as this innocent-looking angelic white kid is intended to stoke fear and support a narrative that white people, no matter how nice they look, are domestic terrorists who we should all be afraid of.
I mean, what are you gonna do?
That was, I'm not exaggerating, this is not hyperbole. That was literally the dumbest take I have ever heard in response to the media's coverage of a school shooter. The dumbest take. Like, she got paid to say that. They didn't pay her to say that specifically, but she's getting paid in the process of making literally the dumbest points imaginable. Imaginable.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a meme of how it started and how it ended. Because I was told that was a controversial segment. I started watching it, I'm like, yeah, that's a perfectly fine point she's making. You know, why is he getting this angelic picture? In fact, it's a point we made on the show. And then her conclusion was, well, that's because they want to paint all white people as murderers? What are you talking about? No, it would, by showing him as an angel, it does the opposite. Like, he might have killed 4 people, but look at him praying, he's such a nice kid, you know? How would that show all white people as murderers? It's just unbelievable. You know, I guess maybe it's a conspiracy theory, like, because that's all the right wing believes in anymore. They're like, facts, that's for other humans. Okay, we love conspiracy. If you show white people looking angelic, that actually means that you're trying to make them look like the devil.
It's amazing. It's incredible that she made that point. Anyway, so you would think, considering all the backlash she got for making that incredibly stupid point, she would maybe rethink, how she handled that. Maybe consider how she's just making something up in regard to why certain images are used in regard to white mass shooters. But no, she decided to double down and she decided to quote tweet my reaction to her original video. So my reaction to her original video was simple. What the F? She didn't like that. And so she quote tweeted it and said, the photo used for the shooter is meant to support the narrative you've created in people's minds, meaning the narrative I allegedly created in people's minds. Christian white males are terrorists no matter how angelic they look. Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that I created that narrative on the show. Did I create that narrative when we showed all those other young white males who opened fire and conducted mass shootings across the country? Was I the one who created that narrative as we showed the Charlottesville Unite the Right marchers, chanting things like the Jews will not replace us, right before one of them decided to run over and murder a counter protester named Heather Heyer? Was I the one who created that narrative? Was I also the one who created the narrative of what happened on January 6th when you have all of these Trump supporters using brutal treatment toward law enforcement as they're trying to, in their minds, overturn the results of the election, which they didn't like? Was I the one who created that narrative as well? I mean, the fact that Kim Iversen, who by the way was an idiotic Tulsi supporter who would attack me incessantly because I actually did my due diligence and read about her record and formed an opinion and thought based on that. She's the one who thinks that she's right about this. She's the, a defender of all white people in the country. White people can never do any harm. They can never do any wrong. And if you ever point to the white nationalists in this country who carry out acts of violence over and over and over again, you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy because you gotta be gloves off when it comes to white nationalists carrying out acts of violence. Focus on the others, don't focus on the young white men. Okay, Kim Iversen is a joke. She's an absolute joke. I don't even know where she came from. I don't know what her background is, what her credentials are to do what she's doing. I know that The Rising was certainly desperate for co-hosts, and I guess they had to resort to her clownish ass doing this, segment. But nonetheless, one other tweet I wanted to share with you guys, because apparently Keith Olbermann also went after her. She didn't like that. Liberal outlets like TYT and MSNBC have spent the better part of the past 5 years telling people Christian white men are our nation's biggest threat, yet people like Keith Olbermann and Anna Kasparian can't understand my conclusion on this. No, I understand your conclusion. Your conclusion was incredibly stupid. So that was my reaction. The what the F was my reaction to how incredibly dumb her point was there. And yes, I know I'm calling her stupid over and over again. Not her, I'm calling her point stupid, but she deserves it. What was that? That was absolute garbage.
Okay, so a couple of things here. Number one, she's saying, we make all Christian white men look like that. Who said that and when?
Just by the very nature of covering the stories, Cenk. How dare we? How dare we?
Yeah.
How dare we?
Yeah, when local news was putting up one picture after another of specifically black defendants, not white, because it got them better ratings, and they pushed that ideology that black people are more violent because it got them better ratings. That apparently was just, oh, well, golly gee, they happen to just pick all the black people accused and then not the white. That was just okay. Now, in this case, well, is it true that there are equal number of right-wing terrorists in this country and left-wing terrorists? It's not remotely true. Every fact backs that up. The FBI backs that up. It's overwhelming. Now, does that make all right-wingers terrorists? Of course not. But most of the terrorists in this country are right-wingers. And white. And by the way, we say white right-wingers. We never say Christian. What does Christian have to do with it? Okay? And second of all, we don't say all white people because there's tons of white people on the left, and if they go to a protest, they'll get their ass handed to them by the cops. And no, they will not get any privileges, and they might get shot just like anybody else. You go to an oil pipeline protest and you're a Christian white male, you're gonna get your ass kicked by the corporate funded cops. So nobody says all white males, nobody says all Christian white males. By the way, your co-host that you're sitting next to is a Christian white male, Ryan Grimm.
Yeah, that's very true.
And one of the best journalists in the country. And also, by the way, a TYT contributor. So we like Ryan, okay? I mean, this is obviously absurd. And she takes our points about right-wing terrorism that is specific and says, there's a straw man argument. You see how they're saying it about all Christian white males?
By the way, it's not.
And by the way, not only is it a straw man argument, it's a lie. Kim Iversen lies for a living. So she sits there and goes, oh yeah, this is what TYT says. Well, I mean, look, we don't sue people, but I guess the Hill doesn't mind at all defamation, slander, all that stuff, right? Oh, call us, bad. That's calling us religious bigots. That's calling us racist, etc. And they don't care. They don't care. But to be fair to the Hill, and this is a problem. Sometimes people will say, "Hey, Cenk, why don't you have right wingers on the air more?" I can't find sane ones. I'm serious. Whenever I find a sane right winger, John Ziegler, I don't agree with him on 90% of stuff, but he's not a lunatic. We have him on the conversation. I just had Joe Walsh, former Tea Party Republican, on the conversation. I try, but most of them have lost their goddamn minds, and all they ever do is lie.
By the way, the FBI has cited white nationalists as a massive national security threat to the country. Because look, she's using euphemisms here. Okay, she refers to them as Christian white males, but don't fall for that euphemism. Because what we talk about on this show over and over again is not about how dangerous Christian white males are. We talk about how dangerous white nationalists are. The very white nationalists that Kim Iversen, for some reason, seems to have a vested interest in protecting and laundering. Why? Why does she feel the need to do that? And what I especially love about all of this, right? We've come full circle, Kim. Kim Iversen, who claimed that I was not pure enough to consider myself a progressive because I was critical of Tulsi Gabbard, is now defending white nationalists in the country. She had the audacity to claim that I am not who I claim I am because I wasn't supportive of a lawmaker who was running as president, who I actually took a little bit of time to look into the record of, something that she was too lazy to do. It wasn't until recently that she tweeted out that she had decided to no longer support Tulsi Gabbard. Oh wow, congratulations, Johnny come lately.
Yeah, I honestly, there's so many grifters now.
So many.
I don't even know if she's pretending to be left wing or she's right wing, or I don't know what she's pretending.
She's chasing those dollar signs. Let's just keep it 100. And I see right through it, Kimmy. I see right through it. And so yeah, if you say something incredibly stupid, there's gonna be backlash. Instead of doubling down, maybe she should have taken a moment to reflect on how dumb her statement was. But of course, she can't be bothered to do that. So she not only doubles down, but decides to throw out smears against anyone who might criticize her. What a clown.
And by the way, to dispel the lies that she says, do we only show Christian white males that have committed crimes? Obviously not. Just the other day, we showed you the guy in Wisconsin who drove through the crowd in a van, and he happened to be black. And we showed you why, because it was a major crime, and he's black. So did we hide that? No. Did we take it easy on him? No. We absolutely obliterated him, right? Because we actually care about substance. We care about what's right and what's wrong. Now the right wing then say, oh my God, they're targeting Christian white males. These are the same exact people who said, all Muslims must apologize for what any Muslim does. Remember when there was more Muslim terrorism in America? Now it's almost all right wing, right? And so back then they're like, oh, Muslims must apologize. All Muslims are guilty. If they didn't apologize to me, by the way, they would. CARE would put out a statement for no reason saying, hey, we're, the Muslim community is heartbroken, etc. They don't have to apologize. We condemn it. Every Muslim organization would be forced to put out a statement. Why? Like, do they condemn it? Of course they condemn it. But it doesn't have anything to do with them. Did the churches put out a statement? Why did they need to put out a statement? Why are all 1.6 billion people guilty? But the Kim Iversens of the world love that. They're like, blame the Muslims, they're all guilty. Why didn't they say it? And then they would put out the statements, and then they would ignore them. They would pretend that they didn't put out the statements, and they would declare that all Muslims were guilty, right? Now, when we say, look, the majority of the terrorists in this country, which is a fact backed up by the FBI, are white right-wingers, they go, oh, they said Christian white males lie. Oh, they're targeting us like we were targeting them. So spare me your crocodile tears. And I said, the reason I said to be fair to the Hill is because find a non-lunatic right-winger and put him on air. Good luck. Good luck. So are we gonna do shows where we give right-wingers equal time? No, we are not. Because then we'd have to give a lunatic equal time. I'm not gonna do that. There's enough lunatic right-wingers all over TV, all over the media. We don't need them here, okay? So the Hill, you wanna do a show half wonderful reporter, half lunatic? Have at it, Hoss.
All right, we gotta take a break. That does it for our first hour. When we come back, Chris Cuomo has been fired. We'll give you all the details as to why CNN decided to let him go when we return.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.